you got one big thing in your party that your party's looking at, and that's Build Back Better. Chuck Schumer says it will pass the Senate by Christmas, which is now, what, 2.5 weeks away? What do you say?
Well, you know, he's in charge of the calendar, so wherever he's going to set it and it's time to vote, we vote.
But you must be negotiating. You're talking to them?
Pardon?
But give us more. Where is it?
The only thing I would say is that, first of all, the parliamentarian is going through what they call the scrub to see if it fits in the reconciliation. We're doing so much in reconciliation anymore, and between you and I, it was never intended to be used for major policy changes. Yeah. Reconciliations for budgetary matters mostly. But it has been spread out to this, so the parliamentarians see if it meets the Byrd rule, and they call it the Byrd bath, to see if it fits and should fit or should not fit, and they'll decide what's in it now. We haven't seen the final text on it, so for me to speak on it, to say, yes, I could be for this, or no, I'm not going to be for that, or you need to change this or that, until I see the legislation. It's hard to say that.
Understanding that you don't have a specific bill to comment on, you don't have a specific piece of legislation, you have commented on different policies and ideas that have been floated. You have expressed some concern about budgeting, what you call budgeting gimmicks. You've expressed some question about some policies. So at least we're all going to be watching this in the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. We're all going to be wondering if this bill is going to pass or not. We're all going to know that you're at the center. Can you give us some bottom line framing of how you will think about whatever comes your way? What's going to be important to you, or what's going to be what's going to be a trigger line for you?
Matt, we were all warned, if you will, by economists back in January of this year that we were going to be coming out of this. And when we came out, the pent-up demand was going to be strong. We better be ready to go. So they said, you know, maybe the unemployment benefits ought to stop in May, because that sends a signal. And if it had not recovered by that time, we could have extended that. We always have done that. But they were determined to go to September, October. Remember when we shut down for 12 hours? I just said, you know, and then they wanted to raise it to $400. I said, you know, guys, I think you heard the same briefing I heard. Now all of a sudden you want me to go back to West Virginia and say, boys, if you can just stay unemployed for a little longer, you'll get a raise. None of this made sense to me. Nothing made sense to me. And I said, let's get back to work. Let's get up and go. Get ready. And and we can see the effects of that. We had people at that time saying inflation will be transitory. We had 17 Nobel laureates saying it's going to be no problem. Well, 17 Nobel laureates were wrong. And now the feds are even saying it's not transitory, and they're hoping it'll reduce. And we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the bottom line is, I was concerned then, and I said, let's take a strategic pause. I put an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal for that reason, and I thought long and hard about that. My reason for saying that, and I still feel strongly about that, is the unknown we're facing today is much greater than the need that people are believing this aspirational bill that we're looking at. And we've got to make sure we get this right. We just can't continue to flood the market as we've done.
So it would be, inferring from what you're saying, it would be fair, it sounds like, to say that you're going to look particularly closely at how it's funded, how it's paid for, what the budgetary structure is like, and what the consensus or what your conclusion or the consensus is on the effect on inflation, the economy from
Absolutely.
We have had a couple.
Matt, if I can say, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but if I could say one thing. The bill started out, they said it's $6 trillion. And they said, we cut it down to $3.5 trillion. And now they say, well, Joe, you've been in there and you've just said it can't be that big, and we just got to look at it. Now we're down to anywhere from 1.75. I think it came from the House at 2.2. They didn't change anything. The only thing they changed was the amount of time they're going to pay for it.
You mentioned inflation a couple times.
Yeah, it's real.
Well, what's the effect on people in your state right now?
Well, you know, people talked about in West Virginia, and they want to know what happened to the West Virginia Democrat. Our state changed more than any state in the nation, quicker than any state. We were 2/3 majority of all Democrats. Now we're 2/3 majority of all Republicans. How could it change so quick? And I said, I don't know. You know what? I was at the Kennedy Awards Sunday. And it was the 50th anniversary, and they had a flashback of John Kennedy, and all of us were old enough. I was a young child. I was 13 years old, and I remember him giving a speech and watching television. And I never forget that, you know, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And I still think in rural America, and I know in West Virginia, we still feel that way. We have to contribute and participate. Something's being lost here, and my Washington Democrats don't seem to get it.
So I do want to get into that, but on inflation specifically, just to ask,
It's hurting.
people are feeling, they're blaming Washington.
Wait a minute,
They're blaming Washington.
Who would you blame?
Your citizens, yeah. For the spending bills, essentially. That's
Yeah, well,
is Jerome Powell the right guy to fix it?
well, I don't know. On that, and I had a conversation with him. I have more of a comfort level with him now than I did, but I still have some unanswered questions I'm concerned about. I thought he was he wasn't hawkish enough as far as on controlling, basically. We were able to stave off a health crisis and a financial crisis. And he started buying $120 billion a month in April, I understand. Yeah. Quantitative easing, buying our bonds and buying our debt. Never stopped. Never took the foot off the pedal. We're still buying it. And they said, oh, no, we're going to. So I've been raising a lot of cane about that. Now they're going to come back and say, we're going to reduce it 15 billion a month, okay? You're clear up until next June.
They're sending more hawkish signals than that. They might start raising soon.
They're saying because we're pushing the living daylights out. I'm going to say, listen, come on, you're going to have to get hawkish if you can. Don't let this runaway inflation kill us. Because we've seen that happen before.
You're more comfortable with them than you were, meaning?
Meaning I want to have another conversation.
Okay, but so you're not there yet. You're not buying that.
And you're talking about West Virginians. I would say this about inflation, how hard it's hitting us. Our average worker drives 50 miles a day for a job. So we have one of the largest transits in the country. 25 one way, 25 home. With that and food, and now with utilities going to be spiking, utility prices, this is real. This is hurting people. So they're saying, well, how come these bills aren't more popular? It's going to help your state. Well, they're just seeing what's really affecting them now. You've been trying to help them. We've spent $5.4 trillion out the door. We have another 1.2 with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We've done so many good things in the last 10 months, and no one's taken a breath, to have a little breathing room. And I said, 5.4. I couldn't get my head around 5.4. So I said, give me something to compare it to. World War II, we saved the world. The United States of America saved the world, World War II. And then you had the Marshall Plan. We built Europe. Today's dollars is 4.7 trillion. 4.7 trillion today's dollars. So compare what we got for what we've done and what we did before.
With the deficit much higher now. No, I do want to talk politics, but just because Chuck Schumer blasted the bill today, I think we all know it's pretty hard to go very many days without even somebody these days in your party blasting you or people, criticizing you. You may be the key vote. You probably are the key vote on this Democratic bill, whether it gets through or not. Two questions about that. One, does it bother you to be kicked around like that, or how do you deal with it?
Here's the thing, Matt, I've told people, if you look at my record and my involvement in public service, I've never changed. I have never changed. I am the same person. I says, I'm fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. And I think there's probably 60, 70, 80% of Americans.
But hasn't your party changed? I mean, there's a lot of voices in your party, the progressive voices.
They've changed. I'm not a Washington Democrat, Matt. Yeah. I'm not a Washington Democrat. I guess I'm a rural Democrat or an old West Virginia Democrat. Or, I still believe in my Republicans are not my enemies. They're my friends. We just have different opinions. I don't approach anything like, well, they're wrong and I'm right. I need the input of everybody. And when we don't have bipartisan buy-in, usually you don't get anything that lasts. It won't last. They'll change it as soon as they get in power. None of this makes sense to me.
So are you waiting for the world to come back your way? Or would you ever leave the party or be an independent? Because you are caught between the two. There's no doubt about that.
I'm caught between the two, but the bottom line is you have to be caucusing somewhere. You follow me? And if they would ask me to leave, I would just have to say, I guess, we'll have to abide by your wishes. I don't know. I don't think that'll happen. I don't intend to leave, but I intend to be honest.
You feel more a Democrat than a Republican still?
It's just hard. The hard thing is that, I watch my grandparents. I watch my parents. I think I've always said this. We're all a product of our environment. A lot of us are who we are because of how we were raised, where we were raised, and who raised us. And I saw the compassion. I just saw the good and the compassion that they had for people, wanted to help people all the time. Now, I don't relate that the Republicans don't, because I have a lot of good Republican friends that feel the same as I do. That middle has gotten so small, there's not many of us left here.
Well, why is that?
I don't know what happened,
But why is that, though? I mean, why aren't there 10 Joe Manchins and Kirsten Sinemas in the Senate instead of 2? Why are, really both parties more on the fringes that way? Because I think you're partly saying you feel you're more where a lot of Americans are than the extremes in either party. But
I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable where I am.
Why is so much about the two of you? Why aren't there more like the two of you?
Yeah, I've never had to be able to, I never had to think, oh, did I say something different last year or the year before? I've been pretty much right where I am now. So only thing I've told my colleagues, I said, if you guys are upset, just go out and elect more liberals. I'm not liberal. I don't know what to tell you. I love you all. I'm just not. I don't try to change Bernie. Bernie is true to himself. I respect and appreciate that. Why they want to change me?
He's actually a model of sticking to your guns and letting the tides of history come around.
Bernie and I can show you how to anchor both ends.
So, are the Democrats headed for a shellacking next year?
Well, I would say that the warning lights are up. They should be concerned.
Why? Why do you
I just don't. I don't know if we're. I mean, there's so much good. You know, I brought something, and here's what people. I'm going to give this to you so you can use it. Okay? But it tells you. Let me tell you, if you all knew
this
what
is the
we
deposition. No, I'm kidding.
Huh? 900. We did. Remember in December when we was deadlocked for 5 months, couldn't make a deal. It wasn't the leadership that did it, Democrat and Republican. It was 5 Ds and 5 Rs. We got together and said we got to do something. So we come up with the 908 bill. Remember that? Got that one done. Got us through. And then we had the Bipartisan Energy Act, which you haven't heard much about. First time in 12 years we ever did an energy act for bipartisan, me and Lisa Murkowski. Then we did the hate crimes bill, passed 94-1. Haven't heard much about that. Everyone thought that was going to be a big political fight. We did the emergency supplementals, which could have been really politicized. We did that with unanimous consent. We did on top of that Juneteenth national holiday. That could have been politicized. Unanimous consent. Repeal the Trump thing. We did all these things.
So this is you're saying.
But you all haven't heard about that because the party hasn't told them what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we're doing it in a bipartisan way.
You think the party's not telling its story well, but it's a good story to tell.
Both parties should be telling this story. Democrats and Republicans says we can work together. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't get rid of the bipartisan spirit that we have there. The spirit of the Senate, and I think from the founding fathers, can you imagine when Washington or Jefferson had to go and said, we're going to have a bicameral body. Now we have a people's house over here, which is the House of Representatives, and we're going to have a Senate. And they had to go and tell big bad New York and had to tell Virginia that guess what? Rhode Island and Delaware is going to have exactly the same representation you're going to have. You'll both have 2. Now, you think they weren't thinking about the minorities' participation in this process of ours?
Well, but Senator, you are a Democrat, so your party takes a shellacking.
You saying I'm going to sound like one?
No. I'm saying your party. Let's say your party takes a shellacking next year. Senator McConnell last night seemed, I think, reasonably confident that it was shaping up to be a Republican year. Democrats are back in the minority. Isn't that worse for your position to get things done that you want to get done